Britain's Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg is in India leading a delegation of more than 40 British business colleges and representatives of a variety of different industries from that country. And it is our pleasure here on CNBC TV 18 to welcome him and thank him for his time. Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Pleasure to be here.
I want to start by asking you what might seem as a general question, but I think comes down to the very heart of why we haven't been able to grow India-British trade faster, given both countries want to do that. The challenges and opportunities facing our relationship.
Well, I think the opportunities are huge. If you bear in mind that the relationship is already very strong, I think sometimes we overlook how strong it is. After all, Britain is the largest investor in India from all the G20 countries, in fact by some measures, by some distance, but also conversely, Indian investment into Britain is greater than all Indian investment put in the rest of the European Union put together. And when you consider that we have obviously this great shared history, language, culture, understanding, but also 1.5 million Indians living in the United Kingdom who are absolutely committed to fostering the relationship between our two countries, the opportunity is huge. And I think now with the advent of the election of Prime Minister Modi, who's made it quite clear that his central purpose and ambition in his government is to unlock the dynamism of the Indian economy, which in many respects has been quite frustrated in recent times by slow decision making, by regulatory and administrative obstacles. That, I think, presents a massive opportunity for further British investment and further two-way traffic in the commercial relationship between our two nations.
Do you believe that Prime Minister Modi's agenda for India could be a game changer? And what participation do you see British industry playing in the growing of India, whether it's infrastructure or industries like defence, where British firms have been pitching for large contracts for several years now, and we're now seeing an opening up of the foreign direct investment limits in this country? What are the delegates that have travelled with you saying about the most potential areas of investment here?
Yeah, I think the potential for the transformation of the Indian economy is just huge, is absolutely huge. There's no doubt in my mind, for instance, that Prime Minister Modi's emphasis on infrastructure investment is absolutely right. A revamping of this great nation's infrastructure will be a fantastic thing for hundreds of millions of Indian citizens. And of course we want to help, and of course we can help. Britain has a great deal of experience in design, architecture, mechanical engineering for infrastructure projects, but also crucially in financing of infrastructure projects. Yeah. London is an absolute prime location for the raising of infrastructure capital, and we have extensive experience and have learned a lot from our experience over years in mobilising public and private money together for capital investment projects. So we want to help with that, but also there are other areas where a considerable change is clearly underway in India where I think we can help. Education and skills provision. Such a young population, 1.2 billion people, 70% of which are below the age of 35. There are hundreds of millions of young Indians who need and will be seeking new skills to meet the needs of the new Indian economy. And that's why I'm very pleased that one of the that I have got as part of my delegation a number of leaders from the vocational college sector, and why I've announced a new programme of support of partnerships where British colleges offering those qualifications for those practical skills which are needed in a modern economy can enter into partnerships supported by us, with also money from the British government, can enter into partnerships with Indian colleges. That's a classic example where I hope we can learn from each other, and where the partnership really can lead to the benefit of many, many young Indians who are looking for new skills to fit and suit the needs of the new economy.
You've elaborated on the education opportunity. Let me ask you about the infrastructure and the defence opportunity. Are British businessmen telling you in terms of numbers, what Britain's involvement in India's infrastructure growth could be like? Or similarly for defence, now that the foreign investment limits have been raised, what kind of British investment we might see come into India on the back of that?
Yes, they tell me there was a sort of, as they put it, there's a sort of wall of money waiting to find a home, if you like, to be invested in India if some of the blockages and delays that have stopped projects from proceeding in the past could be removed. As you know, there are a number of projects, so-called stranded projects, which started and then stopped. If one were just to complete those, that in itself would unlock billions of pounds of additional investment, much of it from the United Kingdom, in India. But also vice versa. I met a number of Indian investors who run world-beating pharmaceutical companies, for instance, or engineering companies who make massive investments in the United Kingdom. The Tata Group, for instance, is now one of the principal employers in the manufacturing sector in Britain. And we're very, very grateful for the investment that... so it is a two-way street. I think it's terribly important that we don't simply seek to sort of try and extract advantage for one country or another. It is about a partnership which benefits both the United Kingdom and India.
Okay. One of the blockages, since you referred to blockages, has been tax. You met with the Finance Minister, Arun Jaitley. Several British companies, whether it's Cain or Vodafone or Shell, have faced negative tax environments here in India. Did you have any headway in that meeting? Because the first budget presented by this new government did very little, actually, to change the situation for any of these companies. So it was no relief at all.
Well, the government knows our view, which is obviously the tax arrangements of the Indian government are for the Indian government to decide. It's not for me as a British politician to start saying what the tax policy should be. But I think it's a generally accepted sort of custom that retrospective tax changes, as Minister Jaitley himself said in his budget speech, are not best practice, because they create a great deal of investor uncertainty. And of course there are British firms who need and are seeking clarification on these issues. But on the whole, my discussions were not a sort of shopping list of individual items or investment decisions or even complaints. They were really to try and map out the areas where we can work together. We've talked about infrastructure investment, we've talked about education. Another area which I discussed at great length with Prime Minister Modi, was the way in which we can work together to ensure that India's economic growth is environmentally sustainable. He is personally, clearly very committed to ensure that issues as diverse as the cleaning up of the River Ganges, the air pollution in great cities like this in India, waste disposal in cities, energy generation for remote agricultural communities, that those are areas where we can learn from each other. And in the United Kingdom, we've taken the lead in Europe in many of those areas. We've created, the coalition government in the United Kingdom has created the world's first green investment bank. We've invested billions of pounds in low carbon green energy generation capacity. We have provided new incentives to British households to insulate their homes more effectively so that energy is efficiently used. I think in all of those areas, as we all learn in all parts of the world, in different hemispheres, that as we grow, we cannot afford to grow at the cost of nature, at the cost of our environment. I think there's a lot that we can do together.
What was your assessment of India's position on the WTO trade facilitation agreement and the negative position that we took on that?
Well, I regret that, because I think the trade facilitation agreement is one that will bring very considerable benefits not only to the people of India but to many, many people, other people around the world, particularly in low-income countries. Having said that, I listened very carefully to what both the Prime Minister and Minister Jaitley explained to me, and it is clear that the objections of the Indian government are not to the trade facilitation aspects of the Bali Agreement as such, but about the legitimate issues surrounding food security and food subsidies for many of the subsistence farmers in India. My own view is that we can find a solution to that, and when I return to London, will be redoubling my efforts to ensure that we craft a solution to that, because we must find a solution, because it would be an unwelcome irony if, in seeking to understandably defend the interests of some of the poorest farmers in India, we were to deprive many poor communities elsewhere in the world of the benefits of the trade facilitation agreement. And I think we can separate the two, and I think we can find a solution to India's concerns. And for me, it's very important, and we talked about this, that we maintain political confidence in the world trade system. And if we were to allow the world trade system to wither on the vine, of course the only alternative to a world trade system is a sort of might is right world trade system, where you just get the economic superpowers, the European Union, America, China and so on, imposing their own will. And I think that would be very unwelcome for all of us. And that is why I very much hope that we will be able to come together, deal with the issue of food security in India, and endorse and ratify and apply the Trade Facilitation Agreement.